Mythic Plus. Is it dead? Is it alive? Have delves killed it? Are the players terrible? Are the players good? Who knows? What's going on? But Blizzard have done changes, so you will get something out of this, not just random woolly ideas.
How do I answer this diplomatically? World of Warcraft players, as we've discussed in the most week ago and covers for that, dog players everywhere, all of them, all of you apparently,
all of us, we all suck. We all suck.
No, not me. I'm great.
Other than him,
obviously.
Assuming it's not phase 1 of Ansarek.
Exactly,
of course.
Exactly.
Well, it does sort of bubble up to my head. I remember and it feels against type for r/WoW, but there was a post basically saying, quit the fucking complaining. Half of these problems are people just having their eyes closed and not actually trying to play the game that they've bought. And usually you see that kind of thing be shot down as, this is elitist. Blizzard are balancing the game for high key pushers and mythic players. But instead it flew up to the top of r/WoW, which you don't normally see. It was interesting to me. I wouldn't really have... I've literally never pugged Mythic Plus this expansion, and I never intend to. But we talked recently even of Sloopbag and Towley deciding to do that as a bit of an experiment, having an awful time. And certainly when you go onto r/WoW or just any of the places where WoW is discussed, people are continually talking about just horror stories of keys getting bricked, time being wasted. And obviously, if you're Blizzard, that is a problem. Because if it's the problem where players don't understand the mechanics they're dying to, therefore groups break, keys get bricked, well then Blizzard depletes keys, so they make that worse. Blizzard doesn't do a great job of tutorializing all these elements in the game, so it is sort of their problem. So it's all kind of hard. What's going on?
Yeah, so for a little bit of a tease of specifically that, I have a segment that we'll get to a little bit later called Let's Build a Tutorial Together, but this is where I've put the Reddit posts of people being very kind of, this is literally a problem about how players engage with the video game.
Yeah, so they're physically painful, beyond ridiculous.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of tease of that. We'll get into that. We'll talk about the changes first, I think.
Okay.
Because these are kind of the first thing to kind of discuss and like how they're handling this problem. And are these changes enough to keep pugging alive? Is the question. What's the answer? Who knows? So there's community sentiment, not segment, community sentiment. The community sentiment segment, say that fast, before the changes. It's praised like this is the worst I've ever seen. He personally thinks it's people thinking a 5 is a 5 from pre-squish. I don't know if I'd put much stock in that. It's possible.
I
It's
think that assumes too much thought and simultaneous not thought.
Yeah.
Because that's thinking about the new thing, but I don't know. I think a lot of this is just players see system. They want to progress through system. They do so at whatever pace there is, and then they immediately run into problems. I have a feeling it's almost entirely reactive and over-intellectualizing it by giving a simple logical reason of how the system changed. There's value in that, but the actual problem is people having a really bad emotional experience. There's something about how this content's positioned, how it's framed, people's expectations, all of that woolly shit that you can't really get right in a spreadsheet.
Yeah, that's a very good way to describe exactly this is a good logical solution, but it is in fact a rationalization that kind of ignores the more simple truth.
Because even in the old system,
it's a problem.
Like I'd never pug Mythic Plus.
Yeah,
I'd always guild only.
Yeah, I think it's people definitely aren't thinking. So we have go back into the Mythic Plus 9 to 10 grinder. That's where we get to the changes. But give us a wee second to go through the rest of these. Don't interrupt our segment. Is there anyone?
Yes.
Is there anyone who's actually happy with the state of M+? It's been very negative all around. It's been correct. People who have concrete groups are happy with it. With people who pug are miserable. That's my experience. I have intentionally not pugged.
Yep.
Getting KSM with a group and not doing any except with that group has been fantastic.
Shadow Vault, I keep on here. Is it Shadow Vault? Stormvault, yeah.
Yep.
I keep on here. The one where you kill Elgin or whatever, Elric at the end.
Iric.
Iric, yes. It was really fun. Mm-hmm. Although, from what I see, the few times I go onto Twitter these days, it's like a hated dungeon.
Yeah, because you're running with us.
Yeah, it was really fun. And I enjoyed the mechanics.
We are players who generally know roughly what we're doing. We're not great. We're not great. We struggled to time 7s, but we got there in the end. But that was like, we knew your interrupts. We knew what things we're doing. Our tank and healer are immensely coordinated. We're roughly sort of coordinated. I only pull with Frostworm's Fury wrong sometimes.
Well, we know how to use the things in our toolkit that Blizzard design around.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
What changes have happened?
Quest reward thresholds have been lowered.
Okay.
This is what I was saying with the 9-10 grinder. It's now an 8 to 10 grinder. Because the ruined crests now drop from 7 instead of 8s. And gildeds, which are the ones people are trying to get and feeling.
Myth great.
Drop from, Mythic break gear. This is, if you get gilded to finish heroic items to fully max them out.
Yeah. Which
does raise an interesting question I'll maybe bring up later with the intent of the system. And the lead into the next thing, maybe being misleading for people. But this is people who want to farm for quests. You can now spam +8s, which is there. And then there's also a big buff to Xal'atath Bargain, which is all of the umbrella term for all of the Xal'atath affixes before you hit 12.
Oh, the buffs are now a third longer.
No, that's 50% longer.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
It's a 50% buff.
Wow.
That's gigantic. And then
another 10 seconds of basically mini heroism.
Yep, exactly. And then Xal'atath's Guile is now down to 10% from 20, which is only very few people watching this. Is really probably
that is basically the big ball buster at +12.
Yeah, that's we're the key pushers. So I'll probably never do a 12 plus because I'm not about that life and I don't have a group who wants to do that. But it's mini Bloodlust Alliance players. Sorry, filthy word anyway. So that's like the big change. The big two changes of these. It's literally okay. We will. Now it's literally one key earlier, which, because the difficulty is not linear, as anyone will attest to. Yes. The difficulty is far from it. It is a very, very, very steep curve of difficulty. Going up one will mean complete life or death.
Scaling percentage increases plus discrete breakpoints.
Yep. Exactly. And then there's also some individual hotfixes, which are very small ones, which is basically Rashanan. You know the way Rashanan's the braid boss?
Yeah.
He used to heal percentages.
Oh, that's fun.
If he got any healing, the fight was over and you just lost. And then Dark Orbit kind of fixed. Dodgeball will no longer inflict damage to illusions or add to Xal'atath. Head had a nice little post going, PSA, the dodgeballs will hurt the mobs. And I was like, I don't remember that from playing Shadowlands. That's interesting if they've added that and told anyone. But it turns out it was a bug. But not necessarily just being a bug that they're fixing. It's also that's unintended design, which is something that's also happened in the Necrotic Wake. But I'll finish talking about this first, because these are the hotfixes that are live now. Red Hook can no longer be pulled by Halo and Starfall. So if you were just a priest or a druid trying to do AoE in the boss room, you just pull the boss. So they fixed that nicely. But with next reset, you're going to find that the Gatekeeper is weaker again. That was reduced by 25% in the last thing as well.
Wow.
So that's a pretty big, 30-something% decrease. And more, basically you'll be able to skip some more stuff because the monstrosity is worth more now. So I think they're kind of not happy with some of these small things. Then
and I think the big one, Stageface himself, 20% less health.
Yep.
Festering Rock damage down 30%.
Yeah, so that rot damage is huge. That health reduction isn't that huge because the Bloody Javelins no longer stack. Which was how people were basically getting through Stitch Flesh.
Gotcha.
So like they did with the dodgeball going, that's not part of our intention for the encounter for you to aim all the dodgeballs.
They giveth, they taketh away.
Yeah, that seems too difficult. Stacking the Bloody Javelins required group coordination and discussion. And for some reason they don't like that, obviously for pugs and how things have happened. Because one of the big problems is people haven't been doing javelins. So what they thought was possible...
but that's because that's a dungeon-specific thing, not a general game-wide thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So they can't count on people. They can't count on people knowing that that's anything other than a little bit of flair, and it's probably something that most people would assume is for trash only, not a boss.
Yeah, exactly. Someone who doesn't know picks up the javelin, throws it at a mob pack because it feels efficient, and then you can't kill the boss. It's been happening.
Yeah,
all month.
that'll feel that'll feel rightly unintuitive.
Yep.
If you can get all of a dungeon just with the regular capabilities of your group, but one boss requires withholding usage of a resource somewhere, then that's a difficulty spike that should be rounded out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Sure. And then the last one is Stone Vault, which is just getting some flat nerfs to the 2 bosses that are massive pains in the ass. In terms of just being long, drawn-out fights, I find.
Yeah.
I
think the problem here is I think a lot of what people want is progression with their character in an MMO where the numbers go up in a way that is sometimes similar to why like progression in a game like Diablo can feel good. I think the reason why Diablo just gets to be its own sort of progression game is because you can just sort of play that in a big dazed flow state for 50 hours. And obviously different if you're playing in hardcore, which is why a lot of people love hardcore. In WoW, a lot of people want the basic sort of gameplay and progression of WoW, but they don't actually want to play the WoW that Blizzard and some players enjoy. They don't want to play that. They don't want to play a version of WoW where you've got to manage your interrupts, or a version of WoW where you gotta know whatever thing there is, and Blizzard, in fairness, don't do a good job at all of tutorializing that. So it's a bit weird because like all of WoW basically just teaches you have defensives. Sometimes people use those, maybe. And you have your core rotation. And that's kind of it. And for a lot of people, they're not going to use half the shit in their spellbook. Like at the end of the day, that's how it is. You know it if you've pugged M+ or seen people pug M+, because the game never asks you to do any of that. And if they do, Warlock Green Fire, there's a silver proving ground requirement in WoD. There's a massive backlash. And so you have this weird thing where they've made a game and they've made progression that everybody wants. But at a certain point to get that progression, you need to actually play the game. And a lot of people find out that they don't enjoy the bits of WoW that are the kind of the more unique mechanical expression of WoW. They are just going to want the sort of default, MMO, number go up, grind thing, do more damage, a bit more, less the details, less the specifics.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who aren't interested in that whatsoever to begin with, which is one of the things of like the audience you're catering to.
Yeah.
Where you're catering to such a wide and such a different sets of audiences with the same game that you kind of try to push them all through the one gearing system. And it is just you're trying to push a lot of people through a cheese grater. And some of these people are not cheese. Some of these people are bricks and wreck your grater.
Whoa.
And you're like, damn, that didn't work too well. There was something else, which is... I think that the fact that they're being funneled through the gear system, and I think that this specific change is kind of indicative of it, the changing the quests. And I think this is probably going to be fine for most, but it doesn't resolve the actual underlying kind of problem, which is that this is a game that's like, say you imagine you're playing any single player action game or whatever else. Generally speaking, you have a soft enough difficulty curve throughout the game, and if there's gear involved in this game, generally speaking, you're playing like a God of War. Maybe you're playing like why am I thinking of Darksiders 2 is the only game I can think of. Maybe even you're playing a Souls game, right? And if you can't beat the boss, what do? You go get more gear. You come back, it's easier for you. And those have generally gentle difficulty curves, and you kind of learn bits and bits as you go.
In ways, WoW is a way harder game than the Souls-like.
WoW has
some dimensions.
Oh, for sure, yeah. There's way more.
Like, people talk about how Dark Souls is hard. It's not a hard game. It's a very simple game. It's just a punishing one.
Yeah.
And I think there's a big difference between hard and punishing. The problem with Mythic Plus is once you can't get away with ignoring the mechanics, because like in Dark Souls, there are comparatively so few mechanics and they're so clear that you cannot ignore them.
And even then, a lot of people do play it by ignoring mechanics as best they can with like really heavy builds and like out gearing stuff and things like that. Obviously, there's like an availability of upgrade items that kind of limits you to some degree. But you can always come back and wreck
World
stuff.
of Warcraft, to put it this way. it starts off, and it's not, I mean, it's obviously not Call of Duty, but it starts off like Call of Duty. Everyone does a shoot bang. That's, whatever, right? It's the every somebody game. And then you kind of, you make it harder and harder and harder. Demand more mechanics. And now it's no longer Call of Duty. It's actually Titanfall 2. And there's a really, really high skill cap. And loads of people swear, these are the key pushers, they swear by Titanfall 2, peak FPS. For most average Call of Duty players, they go into Titanfall 2, and somebody going at 500 miles an hour has just sniped them from 30 meters above them.
Yeah, they are food for the wolves, like.
But then you get to Mythic Plus 12, it's no longer Titanfall 2, it's now Tribes.
Yeah,
and that's obviously, the analogy here is the raw mechanical difficulty of the game. So somebody can be absurdly skilled at Call of Duty and, they can hit every shot perfectly, have the fastest reaction times. But Call of Duty is a mechanically easier game than Titanfall 2.
Yeah,
it's about how hard a game is. So even take something like StarCraft. You've got the audience for ranked ladder 1v1. And for loads of people who like StarCraft, that's actually too stressful and too hard. They'd rather play co-op commanders. The problem with WoW is that within the same difficulty mode, it basically transitions through the one difficulty mode, but in a way that is mediated by the scaling of numbers. So there's not a clear delineation of this is no longer for you. Because if you enjoy Call of Duty and you played Titanfall 2 and you don't enjoy it, that's okay, you won't play it. Whereas if the gearing system makes you want to play Titanfall 2 or Tribes, I don't know, to get your flippin' gilded crests, then it's just like those times where I even remember the campaign in Mists of Pandaria had a little bit where it pushed people through some PvP.
Rough.
There was extreme hatred because to get the progress they wanted, they had to play a type of game they didn't enjoy. And a Mythic Plus 5 is a different type of game to a plus 10, is a different type of game to a plus 12 and beyond.
Yeah. And that's even it for me, because I like World of Warcraft gameplay. But there's not a chance in hell I will probably ever in my life again Mythic Raid. Some of that's because of the effort required, and some of it's the actual game is just kind of, I'm not about that anymore. Same reason I won't push keys. I am very happy with playing some 7s like KSM. I'm that is great. That's good. Maybe I could be pushed to an 8 or a 9 if I maybe want some gilded crets, but I am very happy to go. I'm about heroic geared. Mm-hmm. That's where I'll push to. I'm happy enough there. I'm not worried about going any further because I don't really want to do anymore. Because I know what it looks like because I've been there, and I don't really want to go there again, to be honest with you. It becomes less fun for me when it gets to that level of difficulty. And it's that's not because I don't like playing hard games, just World of Warcraft's difficulty when it hits past a certain breaking point is no longer as enjoyable for me.
And so why that makes sense then is you can just opt to not do Mythic Raid. Now, what if Blizzard did a heroic raid tier that got its difficulty balancing very different to current ones, to the point where maybe by the last quarter of the raid, it feels like a Mythic? Well, then you'd have a position where I signed up for heroic raiding. Why does this now feel like a Mythic? And I think for a lot of people who maybe, they do the early dungeons, they fly through them, they're not getting punished for mistakes, but then suddenly they're just getting pounded. And then they've got there because they're following the rewards, even though they're not the sort of player who actually wants to develop mastery in those specific harder mechanics.
Yeah, and that's especially the case with the framing of the upgrade system. I think it'd be different if you got hero 6 out of 6 and you're okay, I'm fully geared. What's next? Myth? I'm not really into Mythic. But the problem lies that you need to get to hero 5 and 6, you need to go up. So your gear's incomplete until you do another step. And they did, Blizzard are fully aware of that. And that's why Gilded Crest started at 9 instead of 10.
They try different ways.
That's why Gilded Crest dropped from the last 2 bosses in Heroic Raid. Because they know that's that little step. I just don't know if it's effective enough or if it's worth it for the damage it does to have that try to push people to the next step.
Yeah, it's by dangling Gildeds on me, it sort of does nothing positive because I don't see Mythic Raid as a form of progression along the gameplay that I like, because Mythic Raid is a different game to any other form of raid because of its organizational requirements, the impact that has on social stuff, all of that. It's a different thing. Now, if there was a Mythic Raid that we could do with 13 people, or that still resembled the format of Heroic, well, then maybe I would keep on going.
Yeah, especially because the difficulty scaling from Heroic Ansarek to Mythic Ulgrax is it's going to be easier, right?
Yeah.
Which is different from Mythic Plus, I think. And can't leave geared 4 out of 6, just a fact. I don't know if you're taking the piss, but the point is
that's a great point.
Yeah, I think that's if you're taking the piss and saying, well, just leave it there, then I think that's obviously true, right? You can just leave it there, but the game's kind of going, well, here's the game, you're not finished yet. And obviously you go, well, just stop whenever you want, and that's true. But you even think about it in the case of specific achievement or trophy designs for games, where a lot of developers have realized that putting complete this game on very hard mode as a trophy is damaging to your game, because people who are generally collectors and trophy hunters and stuff aren't people who seek mastery a lot of the time.
Yeah.
They're people who want to play it. And there's a lot of cases where big games will not even ask you to play above story mode for trophies. Just do the stuff. Doesn't matter how you get it done. Just do the stuff. And it's kind of about you can kind of go, well, it's a personal problem, not a game problem. And that is true, but that's true on an individual level. But on a systemic level, as a game designer, everything's a game problem in a way, because that's your realm of responsibility, is what the game has players do. So it's kind of awkward where it's a shared responsibility there.
I think,
but
Mythic Plus's problem is it's on a sliding scale, a sliding scale with breakpoints, and that just means that it is still trying to be one size fits all. And the reason I think why delves have ended up being a popular feature is that with delves, people can get the character progression that they want, that because they're not raiders, they previously had to get through pugging M+, they can get a bunch of that through delves instead. And that's just, they get their progress, it's less painful, and they'll genuinely enjoy their WoW time more.
Which is great, but... And
in that situation, I would as well, because I would never pug M+.
Yeah, that's great, but... It's a big but. By the delves giving people the character progression, especially when you're getting heroic gear from your vault, you're then doing that and going, well, okay, I did my tier 8 and I learned how to level Bran, or I learned how to interrupt sometimes. How do I upgrade my gear now? Now that I'm on this treadmill, how do I stay on this treadmill? How do I get more of the understanding?
It doesn't have a discrete you're done point, because it overtly dangles doing Mythic Plus. Because the person the delve speaks to is not going to go and find a raid static group to play with. It's going to be M+.
Yeah.
And it's going to be, if you've been getting 6/16s from your flipping great vault via tier 8 bountifuls, and I guess then you're trying to get gilded crests, good lord, you're not going to have a good time whatsoever.
Yeah. And
it's gonna, it's pulling people over into M+, who haven't went through the M+ journey as much. That's a disaster.
Yeah, which also, to be fair, there's some of that is some of this is the gears problem, where you come out at your delves and you do your bountifuls and you're 600 and something else. Yeah, delves leave you at 4 to 6. Yeah, that's clearly by design, because they want that pathway open for people.
I think the problem is they're going for the hard carrot.
Yeah.
And I think the hard carrot feels like a stick. So
because it is, because you get wrecked.
Because that I see what they're doing. They're trying to dangle some more progress in front of you. But it's not via the same verb that got you the progress you currently have. So
it's almost equivalent to you're upgrading your gear from delves and it says go do PvP. And you're like, oh.
Well, yeah, because it's a category problem.
Yeah. And it's not even just a category. It's what it asks of you by virtue of being that category. Which is also, I think, a problem with the Mythic Plus scaling and availability. They were kind of onto something when you had to finish a delve to do the next delve. Yeah. I don't think they could do it on Mythic Plus.
No.
Because that'll be retroactively changing it. But the issue, a lot of that is people can kind of hop into Mythic Plus and go, well, where am I going to get my gear upgrade? I'm going to go to Wowhead or whatever video. I'm going to check the table. And, content creators, etc., are going to tell me to go to
a guide written by our paladin who I believe at one point recently had a world number 1.
He Dagger was world number 1 paladin in M+ score.
There you go.
I believe he fell to second because he didn't do a key for like 3 days. But he wasn't.
What's easy to him? It's not going to be easy to you or me.
Yeah.
Or most people.
Yeah, and that's the thing where we're talking about. This is how you progress. This is how you progress. Yeah. This is how, if you're a Delves player, this is how you max out. Because you don't want to say, oh, you've done your tier 8s. You're done. Keep doing them for Delver's bounty chances.
Seasonal Delver progression, which is so exciting.
Yeah, everyone goes, what?
5. I mean, hey, in 3 months, I could have eye level 580 warbound gear for my alts.
Yeah. Wonderful.
The rewards for Delves are weird. They definitely feel very attempt 1.
They're very attempt 1.
Cool. Yeah. But even the way you progress through you progress through the thing and you think you've unlocked a reward, but I mean, then it's just like a thing you can go and buy. I don't know. It feels weird.
Yeah, that's a bit awkward. What was someone said there that I thought was interesting? Who was it? Sorry. Where'd that go? Oh my god. I apparently completely can't read now. But you maxed out the journey for Delves last week. That's a lot of Delves. Jeez, I'm like a third of the way through.
Oh, I think
that's nuts.
I'm over half. I'm over half.
Yeah, I can't find the comment I was looking at for some strange reason. But I think it was... I completely forgot what we were even talking about, to be honest with you. I was that busy looking for it. Is this a World of Warcraft channel?
Yeah, it is.
Is that right? Okay, well, that makes sense.
It's just we're talking about the mix-up of player profiles, and you've got one gearing system, one thing of progression, but asking somebody who enjoys Delves to go and do a Mythic plus 9, you may as well be asking them to go and play PvP.
Yeah, that's exactly... I actually found what I was looking for, which is plenty of players leap from 2 to 5 into a brick wall. Yeah. The difficulty curve being something along the lines of this is not very good. Because you're like, 2, that was fine. I didn't have to interrupt or use a defensive. That's 5. I didn't have to interrupt or use a defensive. That's 7. Oh my god, we're in our overtime.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet Christ. And I think 9s are easy. Yeah, of course. World of Warcraft is an annoying game because it's always either easy or impossible.
Oh yeah, you're progressing the boss until the point where you kill it first time for the rest of the tier.
Yeah. Ovanax was really hard, and now we one-shot it. Kaivesa
with absolute ease.
Yeah, Kaivesa is still hard because we have some players who need to wake up. But, generally speaking, like Silken Court as well.
Are you clockwise or are you clock foolish?
Yeah, so that's a good one. So, like Silken Court.
That's not a good one.
I loved it. So, like Silken Court, hard fight, and then you clock it and you go,
easy fight.
It's easy, which is the same for like
many padding opportunities. Good fight.
Yeah, and I think that's for like everything, every single thing. And this is kind of true of everything ever. Things are hard until they're easy. And then they're easy from then on. And
but there's a difference.
And it's almost difficult to remember how things were hard when you find them easy later.
There's a difference with M+. Difference between M+, Zakvir, Delves, everything. And that is, we fail a boss, GG go next. You fail a Mythic Plus dungeon. I mean...
You might as well
be your bollock will be stomped upon in the form of a depleted key.
Not even Zatas.
Yeah, exactly. Depleted time, depleted life force, and
especially the life force bit.
Yeah, so
the will to continue being depleted hurts the most.
Like, think about a game like Super Meat Boy, where somebody's like failing in a level, but as soon as you get turned into mush, you're immediately respawned and you just keep on going.
Later,
yeah,
milliseconds later.
Now,
if not.
Let's say it's a Mythic Plus dungeon and there's one part of the dungeon that you just really, you're struggling on. Well, if that's a raid fight that's hard, that's fine. You keep on doing it, then you got it and you're really happy. Whereas on Mythic Plus, it feels like a slog through a blizzard because you fail once, the key's bricked, basically.
You go do it again, but easier this time, so you don't learn anything.
then you don't learn as much. You think about the way that it sort of hovers anxiety. Again, this is trying to think about the psychological elements of game design. And if you're going to be really punishing, you should probably save being really punishing for a high iteration, a high iteration sort of deal.
Like a raid, but with a checkpoint.
Yeah, so that's a really good example. If you're doing a raid and you don't have, you can't soulstone, and there's a really long corpse run, that boss, progressing that boss, blows. If someone is soulstoned, they mass res the group. Because you're using a hearty feast, you can immediately go again. That actually means that, you're with Overnex. You're in the flow, you wipe, you're back in the flow again. And you just fast iteration.
Yeah, that's why raiding has been so beloved for so long.
Yeah.
Because it is literally, here's a boss, we fight it, fast iteration, we pull, we got it, nice.
Whereas M+ is very low iteration, very high punishment, and very high, it is very high consequence psychologically. Because I think that's the thing with Blizzard.
Insane.
Blizzard's historical problem has been not paying attention to psychology and how they design their game. So the negative reinforcement of the depleted key is just a great example of something that really is, sort of kicking people while they're down. Blizzard are going to say, well, that's fair punishment. But Blizzard don't actually, I don't think they appreciate that the key depletion, number one, it means that there's guilt for the 4 people who don't own the key. And often guilt, if something, people don't take on the guilt, they get angry at the other people. So you just think of all of the ways in which Mythic Plus is psychologically designed to be demotivational in a way that Blizzard just doesn't understand, still doesn't understand.
Especially with the 15-second death timer. I understand.
Makes total sense from total sense from a flippin', I'm designing a board game.
Yeah, I understand that perspective really well, but then you think about it from the perspective of, here's a pug group, and there's a druid, let's say a balanced druid, because they sort of lack defensives without going bare form. Say they don't have bark skin up, and they just get hit by mechanic, or maybe they forget to defensive, maybe they just set out of position, and 15 seconds, and that's enough to deplete the key, wherever else. The person they depleted the key from, they're like, I'm sorry. And it's like, you made one mistake and you just set back this person's key by a stage. It isn't sorry, I wasted your time in this dungeon and we're not going to, or, we're going to finish it, but it's not going to go forward.
Oh, sorry, I caused the wipe. We'll go again in 90 seconds.
Yeah. Instead, it's actually, to hell with you. Sorry. To hell with you. I have ruined your key. I've set you back in your personal progress.
It's the video. It's rude to be bad at WoW.
Yeah, that's it. Right, that's it.
Raids, okay, big picture, yes, in Raid, it is possible to be rude to be bad at WoW. But the thing is that small, innocent mistakes that any team is going to have in what you could call a period of training, Raids do not punish that massively because you can just go again.
Yeah, rude isn't a binary. It's a gradation, and it's more rude to be bad in M+. Because you're doing more damage by being bad.
Even if it's a tiny little mistake. So yeah, Mythic Plus still is, I think, very sort of, high systemic level, designed to create anxiety, misery, anger, avoidance of blame, and all of these different things. Blizzard don't intend it, but it's the upshot of the psychology. And Blizzard have always been so, they've always thought gameplay first in this very first order, not very psychological way. They've just been thinking, what are the rules of the game? You got to start to think about, well, what are the psychological upshots of these rules? And how are our opponent games, how can they sort of do the psychology better and beat us up and take our lunch money? Which in Mythic Plus, lots of games could.
Yeah.
On other parts of WoW.
No doubt.